Today we're going to learn how to interpret the discriminant of quadratic equations.
Today's video is on interpreting the discriminant. When interpreting the discriminant, your quadratic formula would be x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, which all of this goes over to a. When you are finding the discriminant, you take this part of the equation, b squared minus 4ac, and that part will determine what our solution will look like. Now, when you take this part of the equation, if the discriminant, this is the discriminant, is greater than 0, you will have two solutions. So if the discriminant is equal to 0, if b squared minus 4ac is equal to 0, when you take b squared minus 4 times a times z, if that equals 0, that would tell us that your quadratic equation would be 0, and the square root of 0 is 0. So the only solution you would be able to have would be x equals negative b over 2a, and you would only have one solution. So if the discriminant is equal to 0, you have one solution. Say now that your discriminant is less than 0. You cannot have a negative number under the radical. So since you can't take a square root of a negative number, there would be no real solution. So for this one, you would have no real solutions if the discriminant is less than 0. So here's a practice problem. 5x squared equals 6x. You need to get this into this form to find your discriminant. So you need to label your a term, which would be 5, your b term, which would be 6, and since this is equal to 0, c is equal to 0, so that would cancel out. So once you plug this into this form, you would have negative 6 squared minus 4 times 5. Now since this is equal to 0, this would all cancel out. So you would have negative 6 squared, which would equal a positive 36. So that would give you two real solutions. Now not only would these be two real solutions, these would also be two rational solutions. We're going to do another practice problem, but this time we're going to take 41x squared minus 31x minus 52 equals 0. So once again, you need to label your a term, your b term, and your c term, and plug that in to b squared minus 4ac. So you're going to take negative 31 squared minus 4 times a times c. Now when you plug this back in, they will become positive. So it will be negative 31 squared plus 4 times 41 plus times positive 52. So since that becomes positive, you have 31 squared plus 4 times 41 times 52. So since this would all be greater than 0, once again, you would have two real solutions. Our last practice problem we're going to do is x squared minus 8x plus 16 equals 0. So once again, we're going to look at the discriminant. So once you plug this back in to the discriminant, b squared minus 4ac, you would get negative 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times 16. So once you solve this, 64 minus 64 would equal 0, which would give you one solution. Now, if you want to find out if it's radical or not, you would just look up here and you would take x minus 4 and x minus 4 equals 0. So the one solution you would have would be x equals 4.
Oh, wait. All right, go.
So what you need to remember when finding the discriminant of quadratic equations is if the discriminant, which is b squared minus 4ac, if the discriminant is greater than 0, you will have two solutions. The discriminant is what is under the radical sign of the quadratic formula. If the discriminant is equal to 0, you will only have one solution. And if the discriminant is less than 0, then there will be no real solutions. And the graph would be dipping down.
The lighting's really bad.
Remember, the discriminant is under the radical sign of the quadratic formula, and you don't have to solve the whole equation. All you have to do is figure out how many real solutions or how many solutions there are when interpreting the discriminant.
You interpret the discriminant.